So let's begin. Fundamental principles of security. So what are those fundamental principles of security? So when it comes to security, you must have heard of three basic terms that keep getting repeated whenever we are talking of the basics of security. Those three terms are CIA. CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Those are the three basic pillars of security. Why are they called the three pillars of security, the three basic principles of security? That is why that is the case because whenever we are talking of securing something, we are talking of securing them either from the confidentiality point of view, or from integrity point of view, or from availability point of view. So that is why these three are called the pillars of security. They are often abbreviated as CIA, or sometimes you may also see the acronym as AIC or ACI. Doesn't really matter. Uh, yeah. So what do these terms mean? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Let's begin, and then there will be other terms as well, which I will be explaining. But first, let's understand these three terms because these are the basic pillars. So confidentiality. What is confidentiality? Confidentiality is about ensuring that information or system is accessible only to the authorized parties, because you don't want that certain piece of information or an asset or a system should be made accessible to unauthorized people or to unauthorized parties, right? So that is what confidentiality is about. It is about putting the controls in place to ensure that only the people who are authorized to access that system or to access that information are able to access that. No other unauthorized person is able to access that information. So when you ensure that piece, then that means you are ensuring confidentiality. So for example, let's say you have a server in your data center, and that server, in front of that server there is a router, and on that router you put an access list saying that that server behind the router can only be accessed from a certain IP address. So what are you doing there? You are trying to make sure that the server is accessible only from a certain IP address and not from any other IP address. So by putting that access list, by putting that restriction there, you are ensuring the confidentiality of that server by making sure that only the people who are coming from that, only that IP address is able to access that server. All right. So that is confidentiality. What are some of the ways in which we can ensure confidentiality? We can use encryption, right? We can use access list, we can use authentication. So when you encrypt something, you are saying that, hey, the now only the person who has the key to decrypt this information will be able to access it, and no other person will be able to access it, right? You are ensuring confidentiality in that manner. Similarly, I just gave you the example of access list, and then similarly you can also secure a server or a device by putting authentication on it, so that only the people who have the right username and password or any other credentials will be able to access it. People who do not have the right credentials, that means people who are not authorized, will not be able to access that server. So that is what confidentiality is about, ensuring that certain system or certain pieces of information are only accessible to authorized parties. That's confidentiality. Next, we have one moment. Next, we have integrity. What do we mean by integrity? Integrity is about putting controls in place to ensure that the information is correct. And even if it is not correct, at least you should have the mechanisms to detect that the information has been unauthorized, has been altered or tampered with in an unauthorized manner. So that is what integrity is about. It is about ensuring the correctness of the information, and it is about ensuring that information is protected from unauthorized alteration. So, for example, if let's say two users are communicating, user A and user B, and user A sends some information to user B. Now, how can user B be sure that the information that it is receiving was indeed the information that was sent by user A? Maybe somebody altered it on the way, or maybe it got altered by mistake on the way due to some faulty cable, for example. How can user B get to know that the information that it is receiving is actually the information that was sent by user A? So when you put those mechanisms in place to ensure that the receiver can actually ensure the correctness of the information, that is what is meant by ensuring integrity. Okay, so there are various ways in which you can ensure integrity. For example, through hashing, through CRCs. CRC stands for cyclic redundancy check, and through parity bits. There are other ways as well, but these are some basic examples using which you can ensure integrity. Next aspect of security is availability. So availability is about ensuring that the systems or the information is available when you need it. Correct? So it's about making sure that when you need the information, when you need the system, it is up and running, it is available to you. If it is not available, that means the availability aspect of security has been compromised. So, for example, if you have a really critical server, and if you know that if that server is not available, if that server goes down for, let's say, even for a few seconds or even for half an hour or 1 minute, then it could cause a loss of millions of dollars for the organization. Then you cannot afford to have that server not being available, right? That is when you will put some additional measures in place to ensure the availability of that server. All right. So, what are some of the ways in which we can ensure availability? Typical measures that ensure availability are backups. You can take the backup of a server or backup of an image. You can configure your devices in failover, like we often configure firewalls and routers and switches in failover mode, so that if one firewall goes down, the other firewall can immediately take over, so that it is always available. Same way we can have redundancy or fault tolerance measures. All right. So those are the three pillars of security: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So initially, when security triad was built, these were the three things that were there. However, later, as networks evolved, as IT evolved, it was realized that having just these three as the core concepts of security, as the fundamental principles of security, is not enough. And that is when some more terms were added in addition to these three principles of CIA. So, what are those terms? Let's take a look. So, these are the two additional terms that you should be aware of for the exam: authenticity. All right. Now, don't confuse this with authentication. Authentication is different. Authenticity is different. Authentication is when you are authenticating anybody to ensure that they have the right credentials, right? They have the right username and password. That is authentication. But this is authenticity. What is meant by authenticity? Authenticity is about having two things in place. Okay. Remember that. Authenticity is about having two things in place. First one is having the confidence that data is authentic, which means that data has not been tampered with. It is about having the integrity of the data, which I had explained just a few seconds before. So, first part of authenticity is making sure that the data is authentic. It has not been tampered with. It has not been altered. Data is correct. It is authentic. That is the first part. And the second part of authenticity is about having the confidence that it originated from the source from where it is being claimed that it originated. So if the sender is claiming that the data came from user A, then how can you ensure that it actually came from user A and not from some attacker who is impersonating to be user A? All right. So that is what these two things are as part of authenticity. First is making sure that the data is correct, it is authentic, it has not been changed, it has not been tampered with. Second is having the confidence that the data originated from the source from where it should have originated. That is, it is coming actually from the right source and not from some impersonator. So these are the two things that come under authenticity. All right. And also authentication is about mostly about users or entities or processes, because they are the ones who are authenticating. But authenticity is about data, it's not about user. Okay. So keep that point in mind. Next term is non-repudiation. So to understand non-repudiation, let's first understand repudiation. So what is repudiation? Repudiation means that you have the ability to deny your actions, and then nobody can prove that you actually performed those actions. So for example, let's say if a user logs into a router and they make some changes, some unauthorized changes that they should not have made, and now it has caused some problem to the network. Now let's say if I was walking past that user and I saw that user making those changes, making certain changes on that router, and later when I get to know that some changes were made on that router, I can go to that user and say that, hey, why did you make those changes? He can deny that, hey, I did not make those changes. Now if I don't have any proof, if I don't have any, for example, CCTV footage, or if I don't have any logs from the router which can prove that indeed that user was the one who made those changes, then I cannot prove that yes, that user had made those changes, right? And that means that user can repudiate what that user had done, and I cannot do anything about it. So in security, what we are looking for is we are looking for the feature or the quality of non-repudiation, which means that the assurance that someone cannot deny performing an action. They can deny if they want, but we will have proof which will say otherwise. So in the absence of proof, we will have we will have to face repudiation. But if we have the proof, then that means we are ensuring non-repudiation. So, for example, the sender cannot deny sending the message if they have sent a message which has been signed by a digital certificate. The sender can say that, hey, I did not send that message. But if it has been signed by their own digital certificate, then I can prove that no, it was actually sent by you because this digital certificate belongs to you and it has not been compromised. So, that is one way, for example, to ensure non repudiation. All right. So, it can be provided through digital signatures or through logs or, for example, through CCTV footage or something else. So it is the assurance that someone cannot deny performing an action. So those are the five core concepts of security: confidentiality, integrity, availability. Then we have authenticity and non-repudiation. So these are the five main items to be aware of. Now, later, as time progressed, NIST 833 document also added two more concepts because they felt that that securities principles need to be expanded. So they added two more terms, which are called accountability and assurance. All right, so keep these terms in mind as well: accountability and assurance. So two A's. What is accountability? It's a simple one. Accountability is the ability to trace the actions back to the user. It means that you can hold somebody accountable by giving them the proof that, hey, this is what we have, which shows us that you are the one who did this act. Okay, so it is the ability to trace the actions back to the user. And then we have assurance. What is assurance? Assurance is the grounds or the basis of confidence in the implementation of security measures. So just because you have implemented some security measures doesn't always mean that they are working as expected. So how much of assurance do you have? How much of confidence do you have that the security measures that have been implemented, they are indeed working as expected, as intended? So as it says here, it's about having the confidence that the security measures are working as intended. So those are the two additional items that were added by NIST 833: accountability and assurance. So keep those in mind as well.